When a homeless kid shouted, "Don't eat that," no one expected what would happen next. The park cafe was a magnet for the city's elite, tucked between rows of manicured trees and the hum of a nearby fountain. It was midday and the cafe buzzed with life waiters in crisp uniforms weaved gracefully between tables, balancing trays of artisan dishes and freshly brewed coffee. The air smelled of warm bread and the faint sweetness of blooming flowers. But for one man, none of this seemed remarkable. At a prime table in the center sat Bernard Green, a name synonymous with power and wealth. He had built his empire from scratch, starting with real estate in his 20s and expanding into ventures that few could dream of. At 72, he carried himself with the confidence of someone who owned not just his world, but perhaps the worlds of everyone around him. His sharp suit and gold-rimmed glasses reflected a life of opulence. Yet as he glanced at the menu, his movements were slow, almost hesitant. Opposite him sat Marissa, his much younger wife, a woman who seemed plucked straight out of a magazine cover. Her jet black hair framed a face that was impossibly polished. Her bright red lipstick carefully applied every inch of her screamed elegance. But her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She twirled a diamond bracelet on her wrist absent-mindedly, her attention fixed not on her husband, but on her phone screen. Nearby, a boy lingered just beyond the patio fence. He was small for his age, his oversized hoodie hanging loosely on his thin frame. His dark eyes darted from table to table, scanning plates and pockets, looking for an opportunity. His name was Malik, though no one in the cafe knew him. His face was familiar on this street, a kid with nowhere to go, always on the outskirts of conversations and the edges of concern. Bernard glanced at his watch. "You're distracted again," he said, his voice calm but pointed. Marissa looked up and smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "I'm right here," she replied sweetly, reaching across the table to place her hand on his. "You know how much I enjoy these lunches," Malik's stomach growled. He moved closer, his footsteps almost silent, as he leaned against the patio railing. His eyes landed on Berard's table. It was the kind of meal he hadn't seen up close in months, a pristine white bowl of soup flanked by fresh bread and a glass of sparkling water. But then something unusual happened as Bernard adjusted his glasses and picked up his phone. Marissa's hand slipped into her designer handbag. Malik saw her fingers close around a small vial. She twisted it open with a casual flick, tilting her hand ever so slightly over the steaming bowl. The liquid blended with the soup in an instant, disappearing like it had never been there. Malik's breath caught. He froze, watching her stir the soup with the spoon, her expression unchanged. Then she leaned closer to Bernard, her voice low but just audible enough. "After all the trouble I've gone through, you won't ruin this now?" The boy blinked, unsure of what he had just witnessed. Was this real? Could a woman who looked so perfect, sitting in a place so polished, really be doing what he thought? But Malik couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Malik's heart pounded in his chest as he crouched lower behind the railing. He wasn't sure what he'd just seen, but the way the woman's voice carried those cold words, it sent a shiver through him. He clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. No one else had noticed. No one else had been paying attention. It was just him. The faint growl in his stomach pulled him back to reality, but his eyes remained fixed on the couple. Bernard looked tired, distracted, his spoon hovering over the bowl as he checked his phone. Marissa was all charm and poise again, her smile bright, her hand resting on her chin as if she hadn't just whispered something chilling. Moments ago, Malik could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. His instinct screamed to walk away. Why get involved? Who would believe a kid like him, a boy in a threadbare hoodie standing at the edges of a world he wasn't welcome in? He swallowed hard, glancing around at the other patrons, laughter chatter, the clinking of glasses. No one cared. No one even noticed him, but his gaze returned to Bernard's spoon. Now dipping into the soup, Malik felt his chest tighten. It wasn't just his imagination. He had seen her pour something into it. He knew what would happen if the old man took a bite. His thoughts raced. He didn't know this man, but that didn't matter. Wrong was wrong, the moment stretched endlessly, and then without thinking, Malik pushed himself off the railing and marched straight to the table. His legs felt like lead, but his feet didn't stop. His voice cracked as he shouted, "Don't eat that, heads turn. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. The clatter of a dropped fork echoed across the cafe. Bernard froze his spoon inches from his lips, his wide eyes locking onto the boy. Marissa whipped her head around her expression, hardening what Doride